Breaking news, the verdict in the bedtime.
Guys, I have not seen this, so I wanted to bring it to you really quick before I jump in the shower. I was actually in a meeting just a few minutes ago, and I had noticed this, so let's hope the jury got it right. Let's go.
Murder trial, Florida versus Jermaine Bass. And I want to bring in, as we're waiting, we're going to show you some live pictures. Almost 7 hours the jury's been deliberating. We understand that they have a verdict. These are live pictures. There, the defendant is Jermaine Bass. Also joining me now, former prosecutor Chrisanne Hall. Chrisanne, I have to tell you, this case, the defense attorney in closing, I thought made some very good points about what evidence was not presented, was not heard. We expected, based on what the prosecution said, to hear from his wife at the time, the mother of the 2 children. Guess what? She didn't testify. I think obviously the jury had a lot to think about, given they've been deliberating for almost 7 hours, Chrisanne.
Yeah, well, it's a difficult case for the prosecution to begin with. Although, when you have the death of children, emotion is a very big factor with the jury. But if you can't prove a motive when you have the defense offering a very plausible accident, then you're going to have a really hard time as a prosecutor to prove this. And since we don't have the mother of the children coming to testify against the defendant, that's an even bigger hurdle for the prosecution in this case.
But I think one of the things, and the state said this in closing argument, it had already stood out to me, were inconsistent statements or positions by this defendant. So initially he made a statement that it was an accidental discharge, that he was trying to take the magazine out of the gun and it discharged. We know his daughter died. The son had a gunshot wound to the head, bleeding profusely. He did survive that after a lot of medical care for that. And then defense says in the opening statement that the defendant didn't shoot the children. And it can't be true or isn't true based on the forensic evidence. And I think that could be troubling for any jury to hear that there's such different stories offered by the defense.
Yeah, I think that's a bad move on the case of the defense attorneys in this case to try to offer some other explanation. I really think that if it were an accident, that as a defense attorney, I would, in a matter of strategy, I would stay with that, because there you would have to prove motive, and being that your only evidence would then be circumstantial. And as a gun owner, I can tell you that the trajectory can be accidentally accurate. It's just not something that would be a good thing for the prosecution to have to deal with.
Yeah, and when the defense was going through the things that, in closing and saying they didn't present evidence of this, they really also included the motive piece. They said there was no evidence presented of the house. I understand why.
That lady did it with my fucking neighbor.
Here's what we're going to do, Chrisanne. We're going to talk some more as soon as they start. We're going to keep this up. We're going to keep listening. I'm going to cut you off, cut me off, and go back into court. We know he's been charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and 2 counts of aggravated child abuse. Rising means that jury is coming in. While the jury comes in, the jury can also include lessers. That was decided. That was in the jury instructions. What do you think might happen, given it's almost 7 hours of deliberation?
I think that they could very well agree with the lack of motive being presented, that it's a manslaughter case based on the fact that why was the father
let's
doing
go
this
in.
to
I think the judge is addressing the court.
God, I hope the jury got this right, you guys. I'm going to be so pissed.
Right, the verdict form is in order. If you would publish the verdict
That
and pull the jury,
dirty bastard.
State of Florida versus Jermaine Lavonda Bass. Case number 22, CF 011717A, Trial Division 3, verdict form. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1, murder in the first degree. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree.
Yes.
Jermaine Bass as charged. And during the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally carry, display, use, threaten, or attempt to use any weapon or firearm? Yes. Did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. Did the defendant discharge the firearm? Yes. Did the discharge cause death of the victim? Yes. 12 of the 12 of us find the killing was premeditated murder.
Yes!
12 of the 12 of us find the killing was premeditated murder and felony murder.
Good.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2, aggravated child abuse. The defendant is guilty of aggravated child abuse as charged. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 3, aggravated.
Good.
The defendant is guilty of aggravated child abuse as charged. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 4, attempted murder in the first degree, Jermaine J.J. Bass.
Should have testified.
Jermaine J.J. Bass as charged. And during the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally carry, display, use, threaten, or attempt to use any weapon or firearm? Yes. Did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. Did the defendant discharge the firearm? Yes. Did the discharge cause great bodily harm to the victim? Yes. So say we all, dated this 27th day of February 2025, Juror number 1, foreperson of the jury. Juror number 1, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 3, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 4, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 5, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 6, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 8, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 10, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 12, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 14, are these your true and correct verdicts? Thank you.
I can't see. You missed one.
I was 12. You missed one.
You missed 11.
11, excuse me. Juror number 11, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
And juror number 12, are these your true and correct verdicts? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know that you have spent a considerable amount of time and effort today deliberating on this case, and I cannot thank you enough for that, as well as your patience and with us and hard work all week. As you've now seen, it is why we need people like you who respond down with a jury service summons to handle the cases and the disputes that the parties cannot resolve among themselves. So you are essential and a true backbone to our system of justice, and I cannot tell you how much you are appreciated by me personally, as well as all of the judges here in Tampa, Hillsborough County. That much being said, all of my constant admonitions about not talking about the case are obviously lifted. You can do as much speaking about the case as you would like to, or discussion, or investigation, or whatever you'd like to know in addition to what you've heard during the course of this trial. I do hope if you share your trial experience with others, it does have a somewhat positive spin, so that when they get a jury service summons, they too will come down to the courthouse, as you all have this week, to serve the citizens of Hillsborough, as you all have. I spent a considerable amount of time as a trial lawyer before I became a judge. I loved to talk to jurors after cases to see how the presentation went and what questions jurors had or didn't have, or just talk about deliberations in general. That option is open to you. Of course, you're not required to do that, but if you wanted to talk to any of the lawyers, or if you have any feedback to make for me, let the bailiffs know, and they'll tell you not only you have my contact information, you're welcome to get back in contact with me, or if you want to come back in and speak to any of the lawyers about their cases, you're welcome to do that as well. But officially, your jury service is concluded with the thanks of both parties and with the thanks of all of my colleagues, the judges here in Tampa, Florida. So thank you very much for your service. Maybe we will see you down here next time you get a jury service summons, but thank you for all of your efforts this week. Have a great rest of your week and weekend. All rise.
Yay.
Guilty on all 4 counts. I'm not too surprised. Let's bring back in former prosecutor Chrisanne Hall. It was a case in which not only did he tell 2 different stories of what happened, there were things like the gun would have to actually be pulled. You have to pull it and let it go for every shot. We know that the little girl, his daughter, who did die as a result of the gunshot, she was 5 years old, had 3 shots to the head. Some of these things, we know there was testimony that it had to have been someone over 5 feet tall, so it couldn't have been the son that did it. I think all of these little details helped lead this jury to these guilty verdicts,
Great
Chrisanne.
job, jury. They got it
and I would have
right.
to agree with the additional fact, like I mentioned before, when you have a situation
must be
where
the
you have a death
family.
of a child, and in this case, not only a death of a child, you have a severe bodily injury of another. It's a very emotional aspect for a jury, and they almost always want to find some kind of accountability, and they want to know who
That
did
girl
this,
in the
and they
back
want to
was
make
like
sure
the
justice is
rabbit
served.
lady,
Children crimes
rabbit
are
hole
very
lady.
powerful things in a courtroom.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And there was no other plausible explanation offered. The defense didn't put on a case. They don't have to.
No.
They don't have to say a thing. He didn't testify again. He doesn't have to. They pointed out all the holes in the prosecution's case. Obviously, the jury was not convinced. He has been found guilty on all 4 charges. Chrisanne, stay with us. We're going to continue this coverage after a very short break here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Oh, he's crying to his attorney. Like, I didn't do it. You should have got on the stand.
Seat to justice.
You're not guilty. You should be screaming, I'm innocent. I'm innocent.
Breaking news, we have the verdict.
They
Jermaine
don't.
Bass is guilty on all 4 counts. Murder of his 5-year-old daughter, attempted murder of his 8-year-old son, as well as 2 counts of aggravated child abuse and felony murder. We want to get back inside court to hear what is happening after the verdict has been read.
And also there would need to be a score sheet for the other counts, so I would request sentencing be set off. All right. And I also need to discuss then very briefly as well with Mr. Bass about a PSI. All right, sure.
That's fine, Judge. I had not prepared a score sheet. Obviously, I didn't know what the verdict would be or what it could be lesser, so I just didn't need to prepare it. And I know, Judge, in speaking with the family, I believe at least one of them would like to say something, so I know if we can just maybe have another date.
All right.
About that.
I hope people come and speak
All right, we don't know what they're going to decide about sentencing, but Chrisanne Hall, former prosecutor, give me your final thoughts on this verdict, and take into account that camera was on the defendant the entire time the verdict was read, guilty for all of the counts.
He didn't
No emotion
cry.
on his face whatsoever.
No emotion at all. I have to wonder, did he maybe expect that? That's a very interesting thing. So